Welcome to Nausea Reviews. This is Brian, your host, and today we're looking at a low-budget film by the name of From the Dark. And I don't know anybody in this movie. This is a movie that's Irish as fuck. That's about the only information I have. So if you got a problem with understanding the lingo and the accent of an Irish person, you might want to put subtitles on, because there's two people that talk in this movie, and they use some slang and all of the accent you want. So, like I said, it's a low-budget movie. As far as low-budget movies go, this one was pretty good. Like, in Wendigo, there was a whole lot of nothing, padding that adds nothing to the movie. This movie also has a little bit of padding, but at the very least, it's either because the characters are doing something, like running or hiding, or it's to show the characters are in peril, stressed out, freaking out, things like that. It might shoot it a bit longer than a movie with a little bit more oomph, but at least it's showing you something relevant instead of a phone call that means nothing. It's about a couple that gets chased by a creature that likes the night. I bet you can guess what kind of creature it is, because I did. Looking back on it, should have figured it out in the first scene. So that kind of encompasses a couple of things. I like the movie, though. For a low-budget movie, I like movies that have a low cast. This one has 4 credited actors and like 3 extras that are just people on the side of the road. They don't do anything, they just wave. And only 2 of them talk, because one of them's the creature and the other one just grunts. It'll make sense when we get into it. That being said, let's get into the spoiler section. Oh wait, before we get into the spoiler section, I have to explain some of the good parts that they made bad, kind of, in the movie. So, they like to use the blurry function on their camera. Some of the time, it's used very well. The creature's in the background blurry, while our character isn't. And it just makes you feel like that's the peripheral of the character. Like, if you were in that person's situation, you might see a little blur out the side of your eye that you may notice or you may not. When they use it like that, it's amazing. But a lot of the times, it'll just be blurry characters for no reason. They're not far enough away from each other to need to focus on one over the other. And the transition between who you're supposed to focus on is so slow that it's kind of like you just made the movie blurry for a couple seconds, or probably less than a second, but it's noticeable in a non-talking scene when they could have just quickly done it and it wouldn't have been as bad. Or just not had it at all, because, like I said, the characters are so close to each other. There's no reason at all for there to need to be a transition like that. They're going through the same shit with the same kind of look on their face. It's not like one was happy and the other one was sad. We needed to see the difference. They were both terrified, which sounds like a huge negative, but when they used it right, it was great, because they don't rely a whole lot on the sound of a jump scare. There's a jump scare in the movie that's fake, but most of the other jump scares, at least, it starts off a chase or something to that effect, which is pretty much the only time I give jump scares a pass. Like new stuff like in The Conjuring, where it's a jump scare and the thing runs and then disappears. That's not a scene of terror. That's a shock, and your body involuntarily jumps. I don't like that kind of shit. I want a genuine scare. And this movie tries and does a better job than some of the new movies coming out, because they have one fake scare that's passable because somebody would do that to somebody else. But any of the other ones, I didn't even really notice any, so that's a good sign. But scare, creature, run. Let's get into the spoilers overview section. We get a title, or not a title. It tells us we're in Ireland. Didn't catch the town or whatever you want to call it, but it's Ireland. And since they're from Ireland, and Ireland's pretty beautiful on the countryside, they get a whole lot of good shots just because they went out to the country. It's great. That part's good. We pan down to see this farmer, and he's cutting clay out of a clay deposit to make bricks. At least, that's what I thought it was, but I don't know much about making clay bricks. And he's doing this for a while, and then the sun starts to set, but he's working into the night. He's credited as farmer, by the way. And then he hits something with his tool, and he goes and digs it out, and it's a piece of wood. But then he investigates further, digs out a little hole, and he finds a desiccated hand of some description with bindings on it. He goes to his trailer, or not his trailer, his tractor, to go get a flashlight because the light's going down to see better. But as he leaves, we see the ground start to rise up. And by the time he gets back, there's a hole where the thing used to be that he was trying to find. And it's dark now, so he gets attacked. You don't get to see the creature. He gets knocked into a puddle of water because these big giant divots where the clay's coming out, the bottoms are filled with water. So he gets pulled into the water and his ass kicked. And then we see him come up and he's got a bite on his neck. Can you guess what we're dealing with yet? And then it says earlier that day when it could have just said nothing because we don't care that this next part happened earlier that day because by the time it matters, it's that night. So it's like pointless. Anyway, all gripes aside, we have a couple. The guy Mark is a city folk and the woman Sarah is more a country girl. Not that that matters at all to this movie whatsoever, but they said it. So you're getting to hear it. They start bickering back and forth, like friendly bickering, jabbing at each other. But then it turns into this argument/fight about marriage. She believes in marriage. He believes it's pointless. Things like that. Because they're going on a trip and she's like, you going to propose to me? Because this seems like a proposal type of thing. And he's like, no, we can just go have fun for a weekend. Calm down. As they're going, Mark thinks he knows where he's going. He gets them so fucking lost. And he's like a stereotypical guy in a movie that's like, I don't need instructions. The phone's wrong. I know where I'm going. That kind of guy. Which is fine in a movie because he's not a total dick. We'll see that here shortly. This movie has a lot of like padding spots, but if you cut all the padding spots, it gets moving. Padding spots are actually worth it now. So just unlike the last movie. So he goes and looks for help with a flashlight, and Sarah stays in the car in case somebody comes by. She wants to go with him, but they don't know they're in a horror movie yet. So good plan splitting up. If he would follow the fucking road, but he's good at getting lost. I could have sworn he was going to get lost later. He doesn't. Until way later. It's weird. So it's nighttime now, and we see something move in the background, and it freaks Sarah out. So she's looking around to see if she can see anything with the car side mirrors, which I guess is a good idea, but you could just turn your head. That's all. At least she didn't get out right away. But guess what happens next? She gets out because she's stressing out and she needs a cigarette. So I don't know why they're in the trunk. It's so this next scene can happen. So she gets the cigarette, and I'm yelling at the screen for why until I see the cigarette, and I'm like, oh, I get it. And this is probably the coolest shot, I think, in the whole entire movie, from my point of view. When she lights up the cigarette, you see a hand that was reaching for her. No sound effect, nothing. Just, you see a hand, when the light lights up, the hand retracts. It was pretty good, especially at night, the lights out. It was creepy. And you know it's the creature because it wasn't a regular hand. Then she's sitting around because she doesn't notice at all. This thing is silent as fuck when it wants to be. And then they have that peripheral shot that's really good where she's just sitting on the side of on the trunk and just, you see movement. You can tell that it's a figure, but it looks like you were looking at it in your peripherals. After that fun stuff, Mark finds the farmer's house. We don't know it's the farmer's house yet, but it's the farmer's house. And he doesn't B&E at first, but he basically B&Es that house. Important to note, all of the lights in the house are on at this point. And then he finds the farmer, tries to have him put a towel on the bite wound, because it's like a gash, it's bleeding. It doesn't look like a bite, we just know that it's a bite because we've seen movies before. And after all that fun stuff, we get back to Sarah. She turns on the car lights because she gets spooked, and you see a figure move out of the car lights. It's really fast. If you're not looking at the screen, you'll miss it. But it's just a Mark jump scare, which, as far as fake jump scares go, wasn't that bad. Mark convinces Sarah to go to the house. And there's some fun banter of them going to the house, because it's actually a pretty good written couple. I'm not saying the acting's the best, but it's believable. From a U.S. living person's point of view, I don't know if it holds true to Irish relationships in real life, but hey, what can you do? When they get back to the house, we find out that all of the light bulbs are broken in the house, for the most part. And Sarah is straight freaking out. She wants to leave. She's like, we can help him by leaving, because I don't want to get murdered in this house. But they find the farmer, and it's kind of, he's monstery at this point. He's not making any people sounds. He's growling and stuff. And the farmer kicks the shit out of Mark. Flashlight gets flashed on him, and that hurts him. Just a regular flashlight hurts him. And he jumps out the window and he splats on the ground a little bit. But when they go out to check, he's gone, because movie. And he's a vampire. An aquatic vampire? I don't know, it's hard to tell. You're going to have to watch it and have your own decision on that. So then they go back to the car, try to go back to the car at this point, and this is where Mark gets them totally fucking lost. But then Mark gets pulled into the water when they are in the middle of an argument. Nothing really happens to him, though, except he's getting freaked out now because he just got grabbed and attacked. So they're running around in the bogs of Ireland, hiding from this creature. And they formulate plans and stuff, whisper and everything. And this creature has clothes on for some reason, but it's humanoid. They don't show it very much in the movie, and I think that's a very good thing, because when you do see it, there's some makeup, but it's kind of a cheap effect. Or not effect, but it looks a little cheap, if I'm being honest. So, these fight scenes between Mark and the farmer and a tussle later, you barely see anything. You kind of just see the actor get tossed. You don't really see the thing tossing it, which can be annoyingly bad sometimes. But in this movie, I think they realized they didn't have the budget to show us this fight in a believable way. But if they have the characters reacting to the fight and you can hear it, then it works. And it kind of works. It's like Jaws. You don't see the shark until the end, but you know the shark's there and it's a threat. Not saying it's anywhere near close to as good as Jaws, but that concept is a good concept if you can make it work. So they make it back to the house. The flashlight gets broken. Mark gets his ass kicked again by the real monster, not the halvesies one. Sarah saves Mark with she finds another light in the house, and she uses her phone's flashlight to ward off the creature and get Mark. But when we get Mark, his leg is tore up. He is not moving. I don't even know how you'd heal from something like that. I mean, he's still got a leg. It's just real fucked up. So they hide, and they're both freaking out. Like, Mark is dying because of his leg, and he's freaking out. And Sarah's freaking out because she doesn't know what to do. And then she calms him down because the creature starts to hear him, so they calm him down. And then they make a break for it and make it back to their light. They have one light source. It's like a beacon of hope for them. But then the monster, or the farmer, probably the farmer, starts a fire. And it's to smoke them out, so they have to leave the light. Smart creature. But Sarah goes down and puts it out. But she has to go outside because she's dying from the smoke inhalation. She almost passes out. But then she gets back up after she's aired up a little bit. Goes back in the house to go back to Mark. We get the monster POV of the hand going to grab her. Kind of like with the lighter thing. But she notices this time. And she books it into a hiding place. She stabs the monster in the foot to get into this hiding place. It hurts it, so at least we can hurt this thing. And after some pretty terrifying looking shots of her, like, she is messed up. She decides that she's got to get back to Mark. And she gets back up to Mark with a combination of her phone and running like hell. So then she gets a plan, because they know that regular lights hurt this thing, or at least deter it. So she gets the idea to go to the tractor. They see it outside, so she's going to try to run to the tractor and have Mark spotlight her with the desk lamp that they've been using. This lamp turns into a spotlight. I guess you got to do what you got to do in a movie sometimes. So she makes it about half-ish way to the tractor, and then the light goes out because either Mark got or he passed out from the pain. But she makes it to the tractor, and she gets in a fight with Farmer, and Farmer slashes her neck with his claws. He's got claws now. But she kicks him off, turns the tractor lights on, and it just turns him into dust. It looks like a statue, and then she hits it with a tractor and it explodes into dust. It's like, how much talcum powder did you use in this movie to make that effect happen? She gets back, shines all the lights on to get Mark, and then Mark runs out and breaks all the lights on the tractor. So what this creature does is it infects someone, and then they start to turn. And before they're weak to any light, like any light, a lighter is enough to hurt this thing. Matches are enough to keep it away. It's like the weirdest vampire. But here's what it does. It turns you to where you hate light. But it doesn't hurt you yet. So you bust out all the lights, and by the time the infection turns you into one, all of the lights around should be broken. And for it to sleep, I'm sure it probably just digs itself into the mud or something. Like some John Carpenter's vampire shit. It doesn't seem to talk either. It's like a feral monster. But it could just be really old, and that's why it doesn't talk, and it just woke up. We don't really get to know any of that stuff. It's not that kind of vampire movie. She gets away from Mark while he's breaking the lights, and she goes upstairs, and she has like a crack lighter. You know what I'm talking about? Somebody turned that shit all the way up. And it startles Mark, and he falls down the stairs, and it knocks him out. And he had the wedding ring that he was going to propose to her with, which is cheesy as fuck. And just, I don't mind that he had the wedding ring, and he was throwing her off. I just feel like she could have seen that in a later scene. And when we get to that later scene, it'll make more sense. It just kind of like, why was he holding it in his hand as a monster? And then when he fell down the stairs, it fell out of his hand. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. We'll talk about the scene later that I think it would have been better. So she gets a candelabra, or whatever you want to call it, find some candles. Mark gets back up. She's trying to get him to a safe place, but he wakes back up and he knocks the candles out and starts chasing her, bites her finger, but she has a trap. There's one other light in this house where they are, and he runs up to get her, and she flips on a light and dusts Mark. And this is pretty tasteful. I liked how they did it. Because they're supposed to love each other, they didn't want to show her just like explode him. But I think this is where the ring should have happened. He gets dusted, and this is in silhouette, and she touches his face for the last time, and he starts to crumble. I think if he would have started to crumble, and that's when the ring box fell, she could have put it on or something like that in memory of him. I think that would have been a better place for the ring. Because why would that disintegrate when he got vaporized? So that's my major narrative gripe with this movie. I just think it would have been a better placement that way. She's done with this shit. For real. She John Wick 3's her finger off, aka used a chisel to chop it off. She's trying to escape this whole situation. She finds a lantern. She's running away from this creature. She is done with all this. She's got a lantern. She got some fuel. She lights this bitch on fire. He falls into some water, unfortunately. And during the scuffle, she gets that stake or a stake stuck in her foot because she needs to get more hurt for no reason. And it jumps on her, and it gets up, turns, falls. She staked it. Then the sun comes up, and it's very beautiful, and her eyes kind of twitch a little bit right as the sun breaks over the hill, and we cut to credits. Now, if you ask me, I'm going to say that she was infected as fuck. Maybe since she wasn't dying from the neck scrape too bad, it wasn't infecting her as quickly as it infected Mark. Plus, she cut off her finger, but I don't know if that would have actually saved her from anything. So, if you want to be an optimist, she made it. Because she made it into the sun before she fully turned, or whatever you want to justify it. Or if you're cynical, like me, then she dusted, and now she's a very fragile statue for someone to knock over. Either way, it was a good movie. It's one of those movies where you wish that the filmmakers had more money and time, and the actors had a little bit more time to really hone their characters. I mean, the two characters. The monster did great. He was creepy as shit. He was fine. No big dumb stupid thing. It didn't act like a person when it was supposed to act like a creature. They did a great job. And then the farmer, I don't mind that he didn't talk in the beginning. Why would he talk to himself? He's just doing his job. Then he gets turned into a monster. So it's like, they made a perfectly fine movie. A little bit of fine touches here and there would have made it a much better movie. A little bit more budget. But other than that, it looked pretty good. I recommend this one, for sure. Unless you don't like Irish people, then you probably don't want to watch it. Alright, so that was this week. Was going to do a different vampire movie. Didn't even know this was a vampire movie. But that one was like a 70s exploitation-y type of movie, and the first thing you see is lesbians, and then they get shot, and I'm just like, you know what, I don't want to do that. So I picked this one instead. Didn't even know it was a vampire movie. I don't look at the descriptions when I choose my movies. I look at the title, and I look at the cover art that I see, and I go, and I click on it. That's my choosing process at the moment. Maybe later I'll start doing some movies that I've already seen before, so that I can have a little bit more on the front half of these things, but we'll see how that goes. Alright, well, that's it for this episode. It's kind of a short one, I think. I won't know until I edit, but it looks short. And if you like the intro and outro music, check the description. Have a good week. I stole that from Ann Reedon. I hope you have a good week. And I'll see you next time with some other movie I pick. This was Naja Reviews. See you later.